Section 4 of The Adventures of Old Man Coyote by Thornton W. Burgess. This recording is in the public domain. Chapter 13 The Meeting at the Laughing Brook. The trouble with a quarrel is that when it's once begun, the whole world tries to push it on and seems to think it fun. It usually is anything but fun for those engaged in it. But their neighbors crowd about and urge them on and do their best to make matters worse. It was just that way when Prickly Porcupine and Old Man Coyote met beside the Laughing Brook. Now, until they met here, neither had ever seen the other, for you know Old Man Coyote had come out of the Great West, while Prickly Porky had come down from the North Woods. Prickly Porky took one good look and then he grunted.
"Oh, I'll soon fix him."
What he saw was some one who looked something like a very large gray fox or a dog, and Prickly Porky had put too many foxes and dogs to flight to feel the least bit of fear of the stranger grinning at him and showing all his great teeth. But Old Man Coyote didn't know what to make of what he saw. Never in all his life had he seen anything like it. He didn't know whether to laugh or to be frightened. About all he could see was what looked like a tremendous, great chestnut burr on legs, which came towards him in little rushes and with a great rattling of the thousand little spears which made him look like a chestnut burr. Old Man Coyote had never fought with anybody like this, and he didn't know just how to begin. He didn't like the look of the thousand little spears. The nearer they came, the less he liked the look of them, so he backed away a few steps, growling and snarling angrily. Now it seemed that as if by magic the news that there was trouble between Prickly Porky and Old Man Coyote had spread all over the Green Meadows and through the Green Forest. Everybody who dared to go was on hand to see it. Sammy Jay and his cousin Blacky the Crow were there of course, peering down from the top of a pine tree and screaming excitedly. Happy Jack the Gray Squirrel and Chatterer the Red Squirrel actually sat side by side in the same tree, so interested that they forgot for once to quarrel themselves. Unc' Billy Possum and Bobby Coon cut their afternoon nap short and looked on from a safe place in a big chestnut tree. Danny Meadow Mouse and his cousin, Whitefoot the Wood Mouse, shivered with fright while they peeped out through a crack in a hollow log. Johnny Chuck came as near as he dared and peeped over the trunk of a fallen tree. Billy Mink and Jerry Muskrat quietly swam up the Laughing Brook and crawled out on the farther bank where they could see and still be safe. Of course, Reddy and Granny Fox were there, well hidden so that no one should see them. And what do you think every one of them was wishing? Why, that Prickly Porky would drive Old Man Coyote away from the Green Forest and off of the Green Meadows. You see, every one of them was afraid of Old Man Coyote, and right down in his heart each was hoping that Prickly Porky would be able to send Old Man Coyote off yelping, with his face stuck full of little spears, as once upon a time he had sent Bowser the Hound. Chapter 14 Slow Wit and Quick Wit When Prickly Porky the Porcupine and Old Man Coyote the Prairie Wolf met beside the Laughing Brook, it was a case of Slow Wit meeting Quick Wit. You see, Prickly Porky is very slow in everything he does. That is, everything but flipping that queer tail of his about when there is an enemy near enough for it to reach. But in everything else he is oh so slow. He walks as if he had all the time in the world to get to the place he has started for. He climbs in just the same way, and because he never moves quickly, he never thinks quickly. The fact is, he doesn't see any need of hurrying, not even in thinking. But Old Man Coyote is just the opposite. Yes, Sir, he is just the opposite. No one moves quicker than he does. He is nimble on his feet, and his wit is just as quick. His nimble wit and nimble feet are very, very hard to beat. Digger the Badger, who also comes from the Great West, says that to beat Old Man Coyote in anything, you should start the day before he does and not let him know it. So here was Slow Wit facing Quick Wit, with most of the little meadow people and forest folk looking on. Suddenly Old Man Coyote sprang forward with his ugliest snarl, a snarl that made everybody but Prickly Porky shiver, even those who were perfectly safe up in the trees. But Prickly Porky didn't shiver. No, Sir, he just grunted angrily and rattled his thousand little spears. Now Old Man Coyote had sprung with that ugly snarl just to try to frighten Prickly Porky, and he had taken care not to spring too close to those rattling spears. When he found that Prickly Porky wasn't frightened the least little bit, he tried another plan. Perhaps he could get Prickly Porky from behind. As quick as a flash and as light as a feather, he leaped right over Prickly Porky and turned to seize him from behind. But he didn't. Oh, my, no! You see, the thousand little spears covered every inch of Prickly Porky's back. Slow and clumsily Prickly Porky turned so as to face his enemy. "Got fooled that time, didn't you, Mr. Smarty?" he grunted, while his eyes snapped with anger. Old Man Coyote didn't say anything. He just grinned. But all the time he was using his eyes, and now he discovered that while Prickly Porky was fully protected on his back and sides by the thousand little spears carried in his coat, there wasn't a single little spear in his waistcoat. "I've got to get him where I can seize him from underneath," thought he, and straightway he began to run in a circle around Prickly Porky, while the latter turned slowly round and round, trying to keep his face turned always towards Old Man Coyote. Faster and faster ran Old Man Coyote, and faster turned Prickly Porky. In his slow mind he was trying to understand what it meant, but he couldn't. And for a while the little meadow and forest people looking on were just as much puzzled. It was a most surprising thing. Then suddenly Unc' Billy Possum understood. "He's trying to make Prickly Porky dizzy," he whispered to Bobby Coon. "Let's warn Prickly Porky. He'll never think of it himself until it's too late," whispered Bobby Coon. But before they could do this, the queer performance came to an end. Prickly Porky hadn't discovered what Old Man Coyote was trying to do, but he had become tired of such foolishness, and he suddenly decided to take a rest. So he stopped turning around and then curled himself up in a ball on the ground, where he looked like a great chestnut burr. Everybody held their breath to see what Old Man Coyote would do next. Chapter 15 Prickly Porky's Tale Who on a prickly porcupine makes up his mind that he will dine must overcome 1,000 quills before his stomach Porky fills. And so it is with you and me, with everybody whom we see, with Reddy Fox and Billy Mink and all the rest of whom we think on meadows green, in Smiling Pool or hidden in the forest cool. The thing we've set our hearts upon must past 1,000 spears be won. No one knows this better than did Old Man Coyote as he ran around and around Prickly Porky. He had never felt one of those little spears which Prickly Porky rattled so fiercely, and he had no mind to feel one. You see, he didn't like the look of them. When finally Prickly Porky lay down and curled up into a great prickly ball, like a huge chestnut burr, Old Man Coyote sat down just a little way off to study how he was going to get at Prickly Porky without getting hurt by some of those sharp, barbed little spears. For a long time he sat and studied and studied, his tongue hanging out of one side of his mouth. Once he looked up at Sammy Jay and Blacky the Crow and winked, but he didn't make a sound. Sammy and Blacky chuckled to themselves and winked back, and for a wonder they didn't make a sound. Somehow that wink made them have more of a friendly feeling for Old Man Coyote. You see, that wink told them that Old Man Coyote was just the same kind of a sly rogue as themselves, and so right away they had a fellow feeling for him. And none of the little meadow and forest people looking on made a sound. Some of them didn't dare to, and others were so anxious to see what would happen next that they didn't want to. It was so still that the little leaves up in the tree tops could be heard whispering good night to the Merry Little Breezes, for whom Old Mother West Wind was waiting with their big bag out on the Green Meadows to take them to their home behind the Purple Hills. It was so still that after a while Prickly Porky began to wonder if he were all alone. You see, being curled up that way, he couldn't see and had to trust to his ears. He waited a little longer, and then he uncurled just enough to peep out. There sat Old Man Coyote, and Prickly Porky promptly curled up again. Now the minute he curled up again, something happened. Old Man Coyote looked up at Sammy Jay and Blacky the Crow and winked once more. Then very softly, so softly that he didn't so much as rustle a leaf, he tiptoed around to the other side of Prickly Porky and sat down just as before.
Now, thought he, when he peeps out again, he will think I have gone, and then perhaps I can catch him by surprise.
Bobby Coon saw through his plan right away.
"Some one ought to warn Prickly Porky,"
he whispered to Unc' Billy Possum. Unc' Billy shook his head.
"No," he whispered back. "No, Brer Coon. That wouldn't be fair. It's they all's quarrel and not ours, and though I done want to see Brer Porky win just as much as yo' do, I reckon it wouldn't be right for us to meddle. They all done got to fight it out themselves."
For a long time nothing happened. Then Old Man Coyote grew tired of waiting. Very carefully he crept nearer and nearer, with his nose stretched out to sniff at that prickly ball on the ground. Everybody held his breath, for everybody remembered what happened to Bowser the Hound when he came sniffing around Prickly Porky. How Prickly Porky's tail had suddenly slapped Bowser full in the face, filling it with sharp little spears. Now they hoped to see the same thing happen to Old Man Coyote. So they held their breath as they kept their eyes on Old Man Coyote and Prickly Porky's tail. Chapter 16 Old Man Coyote's Smartness When you meet an adversary, bold and brave be, also wary. If the weapons you may hear of, teeth and claws, you have no fear of, don't be heedless and rush blindly lest you be received unkindly, and like Prickly Porky, find him with a dangerous tail behind him. Now, Old Man Coyote knew nothing about that dangerous tail. He had never heard how Bowser the Hound had been sent yelping home with his face stuck full of those sharp little spears. But Old Man Coyote is wary. Oh my, yes, he is certainly wary. To be wary, you know, is to be very, very careful where you go and what you do until you know for sure that there is no possible danger. And there is no one more wary than Old Man Coyote, not even wise, sly old Granny Fox. So now, though Prickly Porky, curled up in a ball in front of him, looked harmless enough, except for the 1,000 little spears sticking out all over him, Old Man Coyote was too wary, too smart and too careful, to take any chances as Bowser the Hound had rashly done. And this is why, As he stole forward, with his nose stretched out as if to sniff of Prickly Porky, he suddenly stopped just when the little meadow and forest people looking on were holding their breath and hugging themselves with joy and excitement, because they expected to see the same thing happen to Old Man Coyote that had happened to Bowser. Yes, Sir, Old Man Coyote stopped. He studied Prickly Porky a few minutes. Then slowly he walked around him, just studying and studying.
"It looks safe enough to get closer and sniff at him," thought Old Man Coyote, "but I learned a long time ago that you cannot always tell just by looks, and that the most harmless looking thing is sometimes the most dangerous. Now it looks to me as if this stupid porcupine couldn't hurt a flea so long as he keeps curled up this way, but I don't know, and I'm not going any nearer until I do know."
He scratched his head thoughtfully, and then he had an idea. He began to dig in the soft earth.
What under the sun is he doing that for?"
whispered Happy Jack Squirrel to his cousin, Chatterer the Red Squirrel.
I don't know," replied Chatterer, also in a whisper. "We'll probably know in a few minutes."
He had hardly finished when Old Man Coyote threw a little lump of earth so that it hit Prickly Porky. Now, of course, Prickly Porky couldn't see what was going on, because, you know, he was curled up with his head tucked down in his waistcoat. But he had been listening as hard as ever he could, and he had heard Old Man Coyote's footsteps very close to him. When the little lump of earth struck him, he thought it was Old Man Coyote himself, and like a flash he slapped that queer tail of his around. Of course it didn't hit anybody, because there was nobody within reach, but it told Old Man Coyote all that he wanted to know.
"Ha, ha, ha!" he laughed. "That's the time I fooled you instead of you fooling me. You've got to get up early to fool me with a trick like that, Mr. Smarty."
Then what do you think he did? Why, he just scooped earth on to Prickly Porky as fast as he could dig. Prickly Porky stood it for a few minutes, but he didn't want to be buried alive. Besides, now that his trick was found out by the smartness of Old Man Coyote, there was no use in keeping still any longer. So, with a grunt of anger, Prickly Porky scrambled to his feet and rattling his 1,000 little spears, rushed at Old Man Coyote, who just jumped to one side, laughing fit to kill himself. End of section 4.